Wow, it's been ages since our last video. I bet you'd forgotten all about me, and why wouldn't you? The reason I've been away for so long is simply because I've been working absolutely flat out. Travelling, photographing, editing, advertising, printing, packaging, posting, then rinse and repeat. It does make me ponder though, how do these YouTube professional photographers manage to do regular videos and do the day job at the same time? Give us some tips, guys, because I really don't know how you do it. Thankfully, I'm taking a bit of a breather, so hopefully I'll get some more videos done. Anyway, the reason I'm doing this video is that I've now worked a full 6 months with the Z9. And I feel that deserves some kind of recognition, don't you? During the first month, it worked alongside Mr. Reliable, the Gold D5. However, as the months went past, the DSLR started to be left in the bag, and then the car, and finally the hotel room. A couple of weeks ago I did a newborn baby photo shoot, and when I set off for the job, what did I take with me? Well, the Z9 of course, and shock horror, not the D5 but the Z6 II as a backup. Go figure. Anyway, in case you're wondering why I'm telling you all of this, it's simply to paint a picture of just how much work this camera has done over the last 6 or so months. In fact, so far it's taken over 164,000 shots in 6 months. To put that into perspective, my D5 has only done 95,909 shots in 2.5 years. So I think it's clear just how much more I've used the Z9 than I have any other camera, I think, to be quite honest with you. And that's even taking into consideration the industry closure in 2020. Let's draw a veil over that, shall we? Anyway, not in any particular order, here are the 11 things that I found that I like about it and 4 that I don't. Let's start with the positive. I like how the Z9 has totally changed my approach to taking sports shots. With DSLRs, I'd pre-focus on part of a jump, a spot on the ground or even a prominent blade of grass, and then I'd wait for the subject to enter the focus area. That was the safest and best way to do it. Now I can rely on the tracking to pick up the dog, person or horse and follow it up to and beyond the point that I want to capture. Yes, I may pre-focus somewhere near, but only if they're really motoring towards me, and that only helps to help the autofocus out. And it's not as the only way of capturing the action, because with this, as soon as the subject comes into view, the camera tracks it, which brings us to like number 2. The amount of in-focus images that I get, especially when I'm using a shallow depth of field. It's mind-blowing. Pretty much from the time I hit the shutter button to, well, whenever I feel like stopping. It's so good that I've had to reduce the number of frames per second just to compensate for my enthusiastic lack of control. But if I need more shots in a given time scale, I know I can boost it right up again. In fact, from measly 1 right up to 20 frames a second when I'm shooting raw. Because this camera is so versatile, so many tweaks, adjustments and settings. Sound, volume, focus settings, frames per second and on and on and on. The Z9 has more setups than any camera I've ever used. I can really fine tune it to my own varying needs. That's like number 3, by the way. So what is there to possibly irritate me about this camera then? Well, the first one is the sleep or standby mode. Because with a DSLR, the camera's on constantly unless you switch it off, of course. So if I see a photographic opportunity, it's ready. And even better, if I need to make an adjustment to maybe the exposure compensation, I can press the button and turn the dial as I'm raising it to my eye. However, as the fully electronic Z9 automatically shuts down, the time it takes to reawaken has actually meant missed shots for me. And if that isn't bad enough, now if I want to make the same exposure compensation adjustment as before, of course nothing happens, as it doesn't actually make the adjustment. What you've done is wake the camera up because it's the pressing of the button that brings the camera back to life. So when I press the button and turn the dial as I'm bringing it to my eye, all I've actually done is wake the camera. But in my mind, the adjustments are now made. Sadly in the camera they're not. I have discovered that if I keep holding the button, then at some point it'll switch to exposure compensation. I guess I could press the button twice maybe, Or of course I could always try leaving the power on the whole time. But if you do that, you will find you go through quite a lot of batteries. Oh yes, keep the Z9 on and the battery usage will be incredibly scary, especially if you're used to using pro DSLRs. Maybe not quite so if you're coming from another Z camera and using these little things. But personally speaking, I've been used to getting 2 days work or 6,000 shots from one of these. Now I'm down to half a day. Anyway, back to the likes. Number 4 is I love being able to view the images via the viewfinder. Because with no light or sun interference I normally get on the rear screen, checking what I've shot through the viewfinder is the nearest I can get to how they'll look on the office monitor. But this does come with a warning. Be careful who you're pointing the camera at whilst you're admiring your work through the viewfinder, because everyone around you will think you're still taking photos. Now, embarrassingly, between you and me, I have become a bit of a serial chimper. That habit of checking your last shot instead of looking for the next. If I'm not gazing at the viewfinder at my previous shots to admire my latest, I'm checking everything is okay and in focus. I guess that's the payoff for handing over far more focus control to the camera instead of pre-focusing. I just need to keep on checking up on it. Anyway, like number 5 is although Nikon could have designed this brand new camera to use entirely different batteries, I can still use my old D5s. A huge thumbs up to them, as this could have been a really good opportunity to part me from more of my hard-earned cash and come up with a new design. So good on you, Nikon. Talking of familiar things, D5 batteries, yes I know it's a stretch but bear with. The Z9 menu system, despite being very extensive, is still really easy to follow. I like the way that if you've used any Nikon DSLR in the past, you'll instantly recognise it. It was of course extended on the Z system, but we know what manufacturers are like, and Nikon could have come up with the opportunity to come up with something completely different, and it's a real relief they didn't. They just grew the existing Z menu, I guess. The other thing that's familiar to both the Z series and DSLR users are the button placement. This is important to me because it means I can jump between the Z9 and the D5 side by side with little or no confusion, in fact almost seamlessly. That was like number 7, by the way, so it must be time for another dislike, and this time I'm afraid it's the white balance. The Z9 white balance can on occasions be heavily influenced by the strongest colour in the area. I'll show you some examples. It seems to take on blue, green or red hue. Now it doesn't happen often, but just enough to be annoying. Let me know below if you've come across anything similar. I'll tell you what though, there's one thing I adore about the Z9, and the fact that I finally have a pro camera that I can use silently. This is so important in my line of work. If you stand on the side of any agility ring, you'll hear somebody blaming the photographer for putting off their dog and ruining the run. Now whether or not this is justified is neither here nor there, but the pure pleasure of being able to say, this camera's silent, it's priceless. Seriously though, there are enough situations when a silent camera really pays off. I do love my old D5 and the D4S before it, but boy they're noisy. And yes, I know before I say anything, there's a silent live view mode, and let's get real. I bought a sports camera, I don't want to stifle any performance that I need. So I stand by my previous statement, but slightly amend it, that I finally have a pro camera that I can use silently successfully. Like number 9 must be how well it works with the FTZ adapter and my old F-mount lenses. Especially my good old workhorse, the 300mm f2.8. Yes, there's a slight delay if the dog is running towards me over a jump, but other than that the performance is spot on. And incidentally, I've used it for all sports and head-on shots are not a problem. In fact, I've got a video coming out where I test various 24-70s, including my dear old battered F-mount, and without giving the game away, even that performed pretty well with using this. and the FTZ adapter. Now we're on to dislike number 3, that flipping memory card door lock thing. It's just not worthy of a camera of this quality or this price. And given the attention to the rest of the build, it leaves me bewildered to think that this was the best that Nikon could come up with. I mean, now, I know the counter argument is that the Z9 needed the area for the hinged rear screen, but isn't that why they moved the 6 buttons from the left side? They also didn't need to then move a further 11mm in width, which could have meant that the designers could have installed the good old safety lock that's been in place since the D1. Yes, this one here. I know they wanted to make the camera lighter, but honestly, the 65 grams saved isn't any compensation, because that's less than an average chicken egg, or one of these batteries that we thought nothing of packing into a battery grip for our D850s, etc. I guess at least the Z9 battery door is better than the one they used for the Z6 II. Don't even get me started on that. Let's cheer ourselves up and go back to the likes. We're already at number 10, and it's a bit of a cheeky one. I ecstatically like that Nikon have produced a camera that can compete with its rivals, and I can once again proudly announce the make and model of my equipment to anyone that will listen, and even some that won't. And between us again, the fact that I don't have to jump ship in order to professionally compete with my rivals is a massive relief too, because I was thinking about it. And on the subject of relief, I now have a pro sports camera that can do portraits and studio work again, because previously I've had to use 2 different bodies. The Z9 comfortably spans both worlds. I know you've seen my sports images, but just take a look at this one from the studio. The quality is just beautiful. A well-deserved number 11. So finally, the thing I hate most about this camera, and yes, I do mean I hate it, is that you can buy one or rent one and get the same standard of images it's taken me years of experimentation and practice to achieve. I guess I'm pretty much at the end of my career now, and all I have to offer is my experience and timing. And this camera has wiped all of that out. So for that, I really hate this camera. But I do love using it. Thank you so much for joining me, and if you liked the time you spent with me, then please press the like button, and if you really liked it, then subscribe if you haven't subscribed before. And hi to the guys that have subscribed to me, and I do apologise to anyone I haven't replied to recently. As I say, I've been absolutely flat out. I really look forward to seeing you again, and see you in the next video. Okay, take care, see you soon.